What's going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, and today I'm super excited to bring you guys an updated Witchcrafter deck profile post Magnificent Mavens. The deck obviously got some of the best support it has gotten in a very long time in the form of Vice Master and of course the new fusion spell the deck got. And honestly, it brings this deck up to a pretty playable status in terms of like a normal format. Obviously right now we're in more of a tier 0 format where tier elements are very, very powerful. However, this deck still got quite a bit stronger from its previous iterations. Before we hop into this deck profile, I do want to let you guys know Discord link down below along with all of our other social media links. Also, I'm trying to climb the 10K ladder, so if you do enjoy this type of Yu-Gi-Oh content, you like what you see here, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out in what I do here on the channel to keep providing you guys awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content. So without further ado, let's hop into this updated Witchcrafter deck profile. So yeah, it's definitely been a long time since I was able to update this deck. I feel like the last time I uploaded it, it was like early 2021, and yeah, it's been a very long time because the deck just wasn't receiving support. Vice Master was revealed in the OCG almost a year ago at this point, so it took forever for it to get here, but now that it is, you know, the deck's nice and updated, so I will go through the profile. It is a 40 card main deck. For the first card, we have, of course, the one Madame Vare, who is of course the matte sake for the profile. Madame Vare being just arguably the best boss monster the deck has. I mean, it's shared with a couple of different boss monsters, so we have Madame Vare, we have Heine, and we have Golem Aruru. I choose to play all three of these because I feel like they're all good in different situations, and you can very easily access any of them in your deck at any time thanks to the new fusion. And yeah, there are often times where you want to end your first turn with Aruru so that she'll bounce back to hand and be an additional interruption. You're able to get all three of these in rotation very, very easy. Something you weren't able to do before, so I really do like the sort of elevated boss monster count, because for a long time I was either playing just one Madame Vare and two Heine or one Heine, because you don't really want to draw these as often, but they're much better now with the support than they were in the past. So I am just playing one of each of the Witchcrafter boss monsters. For the little Witchcrafters, we have three Shmieta, obviously the best starter. She's the one you want to open with most often because she just is the best grave effect. All little Witchcrafters, which is level 4 and lower, have the same first effect where you can send them to the graveyard and discard a spell card as cost, and then you can special summon a Witchcrafter monster from your deck. Where the monsters differ is their second effect, and Shmieta is the best one because it essentially gets you access to any Witchcrafter card in your deck, because her effect is to send one Witchcrafter card from your deck to the graveyard. So that is very nice to get any spell you're potentially missing or any Witchcrafter monster effect. So we do want to maximize on Shmieta. Then I have two Pittore, and I really like Pittore because she has a very nice draw effect where she's sort of like a filter, because you can draw a card and then discard a Witchcrafter card, which is also more relevant now than it used to be because it's just a very easy way to proc Vice Master. So Witchcrafter effects in graveyard that you can use very easily help proc your fusion more often. So we are on the two Pittore, two Witchcrafter Jenny. So this is something you could arguably play at 3, but I don't like running that many monsters in Witchcrafter because obviously you want to have your hand filled with spells to use their effects most optimally. You draw two Witchcrafters, it even gets weird there sometimes. So I'm on 2 Jenny despite her being probably the second best Witchcrafter. She just allows you to use any Witchcrafter spell in your graveyard by banishing her and that spell, and then Jenny's effect becomes that spell in graveyard, which is very good because it not only lets you use extra spells that turn, but it lets you get past the once per turn effect that the Witchcrafter spells have by sort of being able to use one of them twice because it will actually be Jenny's effect. So yeah, we're still on 2 Jenny because she is still very good. And then lastly, I do play the 1 Potier, and that is because like there's often times where this card becomes relevant and it's just a very easy way to get an additional +1. Also, her attribute comes up for certain things in your extra deck, which I will show once I get to the extra deck. And yeah, she's just like a nice little +1, and she just, you know, as a starter, she works the same as any of your other Witchcrafter monsters, so there's really not a reason to play at least one of her. Alright, that's it for the little Witchcrafters. On to the next card in the deck, which is a pretty big card we got from Darkwing Blast for this deck. It is 2 Cartesia, or Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. Now, when I originally did my updated Witchcrafter list, when the cards got revealed, I was playing Rilliona in this slot, essentially, and Rilliona could search the Magistus fusion spell, and it was a really easy way to fuse your Witchcrafters into the fusion quite early, which was really nice. But I made that before this card was ever revealed, so since that profile, this card has been revealed and has definitely taken her slot as the sort of best card to play in this sort of area, because she just allows you to very easily fuse into Vice Master. You can just normal summon her, use her quick effect to fuse, make Vice Master, and then go off with your Witchcrafter effect. She also is another way in that instance you can get big Witchcrafters out of your hand by being able to fuse them off with Blazing Cartasia. Essentially, she is just a lot better than Rilliona. Now, if you don't have access to this card, you can definitely try to supplement a Rilliona package in her stead and play. It's a much larger engine, but it will still do the same thing in trying to get Vice Master out on the field. Blazing Cartasia was a huge addition to the deck, so super ecstatic to play her in this build of Witchcrafter. Lastly, for monsters, I am playing 3 Psyframe Gear Gamma, which is something I've played in the past, and recently I didn't like it as much. Like, I had taken this card out of Witchcrafter for a very long time. I'll put the driver down here as well. We all know our good friend driver is part of this package. So yeah, I took this package out for a while because, you just want to draw spells. So drawing things like extra monsters like Gamma can really be tough, but honestly, I think this card is too important. 1, because this deck really needs go second cards, and 2, because it's really good with your engine because your Witchcrafters discard and send themselves to grave as cost. So anything that would interrupt sort of your Witchcrafter effect, like in the current format, the most prominent threat would be Rule Kalos. If you go for a Witchcrafter effect and they Rule Kalos negate it, you can chain Gamma and you will very easily be able to resolve your Witchcrafters and gain your Gamma on the field. So I feel like this card is too important not to run, even though it can make your hands like less good because you'll have less spells. I think this card is pretty much a mandatory run, and it's the only hand trap we play in the deck. On to spell cards, we have 3 Witchcrafter Creation. This is arguably the best spell in the deck if you ask me, because you don't want to play too many Witchcrafter monsters because they're not spell cards, but you still want to have access to your starters. So Witchcrafter Creation plays the role of being a spell card, but also being any Witchcrafter you need in that situation. So we definitely want to maximize on Creation because it's just really good as a piece of consistency for both having spells in hand and for accessing your starters. Then we play 3 Witchcrafter Unveiling, one of the most powerful cards in the deck because it sort of gives your Witchcrafter monster effects blanket protection against your opponent's interrupts. And in this deck, that means you can do some pretty cool things. Essentially what this card does, if you don't know, is you can special summon a Witchcrafter monster from your hand, and then for the rest of your turn, your opponent cannot respond to your spellcaster monster effects, which is huge because that essentially means you're not afraid of Ash, you're not afraid of any interruption they have, right? But because of the way this deck works, you can do some pretty nasty things with this card where, let's say you put Vice Master out on the field, right? And then you activate Witchcrafter Unveiling to special a Witchcrafter monster. Essentially, you can go through your whole line uninterrupted because your Witchcrafter monsters are quick effects. So like if Vice Master's out on the field, you can like use Shmieta that you summoned off of Unveiling, and then special summon Madame Vare, and then because you're a quick effect, at resolution of card effects, you get the first chance to activate if you're turn player. So then you can like Madame Vare your opponent's whole board and they can't respond to it, right? So Unveiling has some really good go second applications as well. Bare minimum, it's a way to get big Witchcrafters out of your hand, which is also very nice, and extend a little bit. And it being a quick play means you can also use it on your opponent's turn, which is also pretty good. 2 Holiday. So this is something you could play at 3, but my problem with Holiday, unlike something like Witchcrafter Creation, is obviously if you open this card, it's not instantly a starter. Like this card will need at least another starter in your hand to be good. However, it is one of the best ways to extend in Witchcrafter. I mean, in-engine Monster Reborn is very nice in the deck. And obviously all of these spells are going to be recycling themselves every turn. So in the grind game, having access to a resource like this is very nice. But yeah, Witchcrafter Holiday, something you want to play at least 2, but you can definitely fit a 3rd in if you would like. Then I play 2 Confusion, the brand new fusion spell out of Magnificent Mavens. And yeah, this card is essentially the main way you want to access your fusion. It's the in-engine way to access Vice Master. Of course, we have Blazing Cartasia, which is a nice way as well, but it's much easier to get to Confession because essentially if you open almost any combination of Witchcrafter cards, as long as you see a starter, you're able to like Shmieta, and then you can like dump this, use Jenny to copy this, and you can use that as a way to fusion with your Witchcrafter monsters. There's also an argument to play 3 of this card as well, because you really want to maximize your chance to summon Vice Master. But again, to play other cards, I've decided 2 of this is overall fine. Also, I think this is just one of the best artworks in the game. If I can get the camera to look at it really nice. I really like what they did with this artwork. I think it's very in theme, I would say. So yeah, 2 Confession. Then for some one of Witchcrafter spells, I'm playing the 1 Draping because this card can come up to out back row decks or floodgates, and it is a very good card for dealing with back row. 1 Collaboration because it's very easy to go for OTKs with this card, and you definitely want to do that. Otherwise, without this card, sometimes this deck goes into like unnecessary grind games that take forever. And while it's very good in the grind, sometimes the best way to win a game is to just, win the game. So Collaboration is a card that can help you do that. Combos very well with Madam's Veil, like attack gain effect. And then lastly, probably the best Witchcrafter spell is Buy Street. This is the one you want access to very quickly. It gives everyone like a blanket protection, and it's usually just like a free spell to use your Witchcrafter effects. Something I didn't explain with the Witchcrafter cards that I should is that every single Witchcrafter spell during the end phase will add itself back to hand, except for Buy Street, which will actually just place itself in the spell and trap card zone. But you can only use 1 of the Witchcrafter spell's effects per turn. So if you use Creation, Creation won't come back at your end phase, and vice versa, essentially. So keep that in mind. You only get 1 of their effects per turn, but this is where most of your grind comes in, is the spell cards, because they will constantly recycle themselves. Next up, 3 Pot of Prosperity. This card is something I was really struggling deciding if I wanted to play or not. So like, if you don't have access to Prosperity, I do not think this card is mandatory. In fact, part of me still doesn't know if I want to run it. The thing is, you really want access to all of your best cards, and more importantly, you want like good go second cards. And Pot of Prosperity is a card that finds a middle ground very easily. You don't have a lot of extra deck space, you have a lot of extra deck space that you can use to banish. It makes a lot of sense in the deck, and you really want to see certain cards. My issue is you do have some draw effects, mostly Patore, and then you can run Triple Tactics Talent, obviously. You can choose to run Metal Foes Fusion if you don't play Prosperity. So I don't think this card is mandatory, but it is probably the most powerful card to play. You could definitely play like a Metal Foes Fusion and more Tactics Talents or other even draw effects if you want to in this slot, but I do think Prosperity is probably the best card you can play for consistency. 3 Dark Ruler No More. This card is not super great this format. It's not bad by any means. It's like you wouldn't be upset drawing this card in most situations. But this format, with the way tier limits are playing, it's not particularly a great card. But the problem is when you're playing Witchcrafter, you have to have spell go second cards. Like running Evenly Matched is obviously a really powerful card, and it's much better than Dark Ruler this format, but it doesn't work with your engine. Like sometimes you'll brick on Evenly Matched where you needed Dark Ruler. So you have to sort of find the best spell cards that work as interrupts. Dark Ruler No More is obviously like the most easy card to put in this slot. I was testing around with Swords of Concealing Light. You can try like Book of Eclipse, especially when Kashtira get their support, and Photon Hypernova. But you really want spell cards that are really good at clearing boards. And I thought about Ultimate Slayer as well, but I feel like if you play that right now, you would need to run the Evil Twin Brick, and that's not something I'm too keen on. So you can sort of play with your go second slots, but the most ideal cards to play here are go second, like really hard go second blowout cards that can help you play into boards. 2 Triple Tactics Talent. This card obviously is a very nice fit for this deck, being a spell, but also like this is a deck that definitely wants more cards in hand to discard more for the Witchcrafter cards. Tactics right now is just a really phenomenal card anyways, because the way tier elements play, they will always be activating a monster effect in your main phase. And yeah, you get a lot of mileage off this card. It's one of the best spells you can play in the deck. So yeah, I definitely really enjoy Triple Tactics Talent. 1 Called by the Grave. I mean, it's one of the best cards in the game, and it's a spell, so it works with your engine too well. You definitely would want to play this always in this deck. And right now with tier limits running around, it's just a really solid card overall. And the last card in the list is 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, and that's because this is like the 40th card. I wanted another like spell that was a good go second blowout. This card's not super insane by any means, but it's an out to Mystic Mine, which you already technically have, but it's an additional out to Mystic Mine, and it can help you push into boards where decks are setting a lot of cards. So I feel like this is probably the best thing to play in the 40th slot. Again, you could play something like Metal Foes Fusion if you're not playing Prosperity, but yeah, I definitely think I enjoy the Harpy's Feather Duster. On to the extra deck, which definitely is, this extra deck can most definitely be optimized. I grabbed essentially what I have and what I think is good, but you can definitely play around with this extra deck, try a bunch of wacky things, because there's a lot of innovation you can do inside the extra deck because you have so much room. But starting off, we're definitely going to run 3 Witchcrafter Vice Master. I'm playing 3 of it, even though you'll probably never go into 3 of it, but your extra deck is so free, you might as well play the 3rd just in case it comes up in a really heavy grind game. This card was the biggest piece of support Witchcrafter have gotten, and while it was kind of weird that they shifted to a fusion strategy out of nowhere, this card is so bonkers, it's like fine that we're now a fusion strategy, because you can use each of her effects once per turn, and you'll use all 3 almost every turn. They gave her a pop, which is super good, and it's non-targeting, so that's amazing. You can use that every single turn as just an additional piece of interruption. Then she also adds back spells to use, and special summons Witchcrafters from your deck. So this card does so much for the archetype, it's honestly insane. It procs off your opponent's cards too, so when they activate a spell card, you can chain her in response. Because one thing you do have to know about this card is she's a win effect, which means she must chain directly to what's happening. So say she's on field, you activate Shmietta's effect and your opponent Ash Blossoms, you don't have a chance to activate Vice Master, which is quite unfortunate. So you do have to keep that in mind. She's like a paleo if you want to think of it like that, or anything that must chain directly in response to it because she is a win effect. But yeah, with this card being released and buffing the deck quite a bit, the only thing we really need for Witchcrafter now is probably like an additional spell and the level 6 Witchcrafter monster that keeps eluding us that they will not release. I don't know why they won't release it, but yeah, this was one of the biggest pieces of support we've gotten, and there, is definitely more on the horizon. For some links, we have some pretty generic cards. We have 1 Moon Maiden because you can very easily make her. 1 Relinquished Anima because you can turn Jenny into this. We have some Link 2s. We have the Lambda, of course, because we're playing Gamma, so this is a really solid option. Cross Sheep I threw in here. I've never played this card in this deck before, but now that we're a fusion deck, this technically could come up. It's pretty good if we have Vice Madam here, and the thing about it is that, like, if you already have, Sheep up and Vice Madam always pointing to him, to proc his effect, any monster needs to be special summoned in that zone. It doesn't have to be a fusion monster, as long as he points to a fusion monster. So technically every turn you could get additional monster reborn effects off of this card as long as you keep using Witchcrafter effects, which is honestly quite insane. So I really think Cross Sheep is a solid addition. I think this will be a permanent run for me in this deck from now on. You're not going to make him often, but what he can do is quite insane. 1 Phoenix, this is just a pretty solid out to things. And then of course we're going to play some Charmers because we have every attribute under the sun. Literally all 6 attributes are in our deck, but I'm not playing all 6 Charmers. In fact, this Charmer lineup probably needs to be changed. We have a Win, we have a Hida, we have an Area, and we have an Alsa. So we're playing 4 of the Elemental Charmers. Lina and Dark should be in here probably. You can take out whichever Charmers aren't relevant in the format and play the ones that are. The thing about Lina and Dark, though, is they take Madame Vare and Heine, which you usually want to keep on the field, while the little Witchcrafters, you can more easily go into these. But yeah, you usually make the Witchcrafter, or the Charmers, to extend into your Link 3s and 4s, which we have 1 Unicorn, which this should definitely be Selene. So I know there's going to be tons of comments down below that are like, why are you running Unicorn and not Selene? For those that are actually like listening to the profile, I'm going to say it now. This should be a Selene. I just do not own one. Do not play Unicorn in this slot. Play Selene. You can play both in the extra deck if you find the space, but this 100% be Selene, and then we have 1 Access Code Talker to try to go for game. Last card in the extra deck is 1 Omega, and that is because we are running Gamma. Technically, you can do a lot of really cool things with this extra deck and play a lot of extra synchro monsters, because Blazing Cartasia, while she's mostly to use for the fusion effect, is also a tuner, so you could technically make a bunch of really weird cards in this deck. And now that I'm thinking about it, you could even make weird things like Arcanite Magician, which I think is so funny because that would be Blazing Cartasia and Petore, which that card's obviously not good, but thinking about how good that card was back like 10 years ago, you could technically play it in this deck. But yeah, I just have 1 Omega. So yeah, that is going to do it for this updated Witchcrafter deck profile. I kind of rambled on this deck a little more than I expected I would, but it's been a while since the deck profile, so might as well thoroughly explain some things about it. Yeah, honestly, this deck has been on my radar for so long. Obviously, it's been a fan favorite of mine and pretty big on the channel back when the deck was like, or when I was newer to like playing Witchcrafter. But it just took so long for them to get to support that it took forever to update this list. But let me know what you guys think of Witchcrafter down below. What secret techs am I missing? I'm sure there's a bunch of different cards you guys are testing around with this deck that I am not currently on. Of course, you could play like Restage with Magician's left hand, Magician's right hand. I'm not in those packages, but let me know what you guys are playing down below. Let me know what you think of the deck. Again, if you liked the video, be sure to thumbs up and subscribe. This has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.